Bitcoin could peak around the time when Pluto enters Aquarius. And this is happening on January 20th, coming up in a little bit more than a month from now. Let's take a look at the past Pluto transits into Aquarius and then where we are headed today. This is going to be very interesting. We're going to dive into this. This is not financial advice. I am going to be talking about Bitcoin, but I am not a financial advisor. And I will give the Bitcoin predictions for January 20th at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. So why is Pluto important? Well, let's look at the astrology. So Pluto right now is at 28 degrees Capricorn. And I want to take a look back in 2008. We're going to bring Pluto backwards when it transitioned into Capricorn. And around this time, Pluto was transiting in Sagittarius, and it entered Capricorn January 31st, 2008. This was close. Well, actually, it transited into Capricorn, and then it retrograded backwards. It turns red when it's retrograding. It went back into Sagittarius. This little bow and arrow symbol there is Sagittarius. And then it's going to ingress again into Capricorn. This is the sign of Capricorn. And guess what's very interesting about this? This was the time when Bitcoin was born, when Pluto was at 1 degree Capricorn, January 2009, okay? So that's one very significant thing. Another significant thing was this was during the time of the 2008 market crash, when we saw the Dow Jones and the macro markets worldwide collapse, okay? So Pluto is the planet of transformation, and it was when it was heading into Capricorn, it was transforming what Capricorn represents, and Capricorn represents systems and structures of society, the banking institutions, potentially, in a way, it represents real estate, but the institutions behind the real estate, financial markets, as Pluto is the planet that rules the eighth house of investments, taxes, loans, things of that nature. So, bureaucracy, top-down authority. So Pluto was transforming those things, and usually what happens when things transform is they collapse first before they are rebuilt. So this is a major worldwide market collapse. All right. So we're going to talk more about that. But the interesting thing is Pluto has gone through Capricorn through the last 15 or so years, and now, just now recently, we are heading into Aquarius. The Pluto enters Aquarius here. It's happening on January 20th. So what is going to transform in the world? Let's talk more about that. But first off, I want to go into what happened in 2008. And I'm going to go to one of my previous videos where I talked about this. This video was back in 6 months ago this year. I talked about this. So let's do a review on this video, and then we will continue and see what we're heading into when Pluto enters Aquarius on January 20th. I'll show you the last time this happened in 2008. Let me see if I can pull this chart up. All right, here we go. So, as you can see here, Pluto transited 0 degrees Capricorn back in 2008 in March. Oh, shoot. That's not correct. That's 2023. This is when it's coming in right now. This is March 23rd where it's coming in. But let's look back at 2008. Let me go back here. And here we go. So January 2008, we saw Pluto transit to 0 degrees Capricorn. And then we had a few months here, many months, before Pluto retrograded back to 0 degrees Capricorn. So what we saw here was some pumping action, And then we saw this dump, and then the beginning of the major dump after Pluto retrograded to 0 degrees. All right, so keep that in mind. We're going to go into much more detail on that. And then once the retrograde, and then it came back forward and transited 0 degrees one last time. Then we had one last major dump. This was the 2008 crash, guys. So this is why Pluto is so transformative, especially in the financial. Just to interrupt really quickly. So what's interesting is when Pluto ingressed into Aquarius, it then retrograded. And then the second time it when it ingressed into Capricorn, not Aquarius, we saw just major market collapses, and markets were heading into major lows here. So I was a little concerned when first analyzing these Pluto transits. I was, and this is probably also why a lot of people thought we were heading into a major market collapse soon. But there is a serious argument to why that's probably not going to happen anytime soon, though it will happen eventually, and I'll talk more about that. Financial markets, especially when it's in Capricorn. And right now Pluto is retrograding back to Capricorn. It'll go back into Capricorn after June 11th, right here on this orange line. All right, so that was back earlier this year when Pluto was retrograding backwards into Aquarius around June. But we have since surpassed that time. But I'm going to fast forward here a little bit. Oh, shoot. Okay, we're going to get some video ad here. I'm going to skip that. Pluto is transiting 0 degrees. It already did on March 23rd. Then it's going to go retrograde on June 11th and hit 0 degrees Aquarius. And it's going to be back in Capricorn. All right, so these are the dates here. We already saw, these transit here earlier this year. And then January 20th, that's California time, or actually this is in Indonesian time. So Indonesian time, January 21st, United States time, January 20th, Pluto's ingressing again into Aquarius. And then it's going to take all the way till September for it to retrograde back into Capricorn. And then one last time, a third time, it's going to ingress again into Aquarius for one final time. And I'll show you that here really quick on my software. So right now Pluto's in Capricorn. We go ahead, it's going to go into Aquarius, and it's going to stay in Aquarius, but then it's going to retrograde back into Capricorn, but then go back into Aquarius again for the third time. Okay, so that's a sped up version what's going to happen throughout this year, and this is very, very, very significant. This year's bringing world-changing events which could massively affect world markets as well. So stay tuned for what's to come. Let's see, I also want to show you some other things in this video. Okay, let me fast forward here. So another time Pluto transited a new sign 3 times was all the way back in 1937. All right, so I went back into history books and I found this information. So let me show you this. 3 times into 0 degrees of that sign. So these are the specific dates that it ingressed into this 0 degrees. And then I looked at the Dow Jones. Since we don't have the history for Bitcoin going back this far, I looked at the Dow Jones, and typically Bitcoin follows the Dow Jones pretty closely historically. So I looked at the Dow Jones from 1937 to 1938. This is what we found. So we found a major dump before it ingressed into 0 degrees in 1937. Pluto ingressed to 0 degrees here. Then we saw a pump and then a dump. And then when it was retrograding back to 0 degrees was when we kind of saw this low here. So there's a pretty big dump there. All right, so we basically saw, the markets dump in between the first retrograde and the second ingress. The markets were pumping, so that is significant. Remember that. I also looked at another time that Pluto ingressed to a new sign. 3 times, that was 1912 to 1914. And then additionally, also, it happened in 1956. So I put all 3 of these together, and we came up with this. These are the screenshots of the Dow Jones with the vertical lines representing Pluto transiting a new sign. So what is significant here? Well, where are we at right now? We are in basically the second blue line. So we are in this on January 20th. Pluto's ingressing for the second time into the new sign, this time Aquarius. And so what typically happens historically? Well, we see the market kind of hitting a low and then a pump before the ingress into the new sign. So we see that here in 1956. The second one is 1937. We see a dump, and then we're pumping into the ingress into Aquarius. We can't see the 1912 one. Shoot, let me see if I can find that. Where's the 1912? I'll have to find another. But I believe the 1912 one was very similar. My face is blocking it, unfortunately. But let me see. Yeah, I guess I don't have that image yet. But one thing that's very similar is I'd say the 1956 one is the most similar to where we are at in the markets today, because we are kind of topping out. We aren't now in a major low like it is kind of in 1937 and 1912, where the markets are massively dipping. We're actually pretty high right now. So we're potentially heading into an all-time high with the Dow Jones, and I'll show you that. So I think it's more similar to 1956, given what the charts are looking like right now. So we could see something like this. We could see a pump into January 20th, something around like that, before we potentially see another market correction afterwards. So let's look at the Dow Jones actually. Well, this is Bitcoin. And Bitcoin typically follows the Dow Jones pretty closely. So here with Bitcoin, we saw the first ingress into Aquarius with Pluto back in March. We saw the markets dump a little bit and then pump when it retrograded, but kind of a correction. And now we are pumping, which is very similar to what happened in 1956. Let's look at the Dow Jones. Let's go up here. All right, we have these Pluto transits shown here. So when it first ingressed into Aquarius, we pumped, and then a little correction, still pumping, but then we did see this major correction we saw between when Pluto retrograded to when it's going to ingress in January. We've already seen this dump, and then we're pumping towards January 20th. Let's compare this to 1956. Here's a little screenshot. What do we do here? We pumped into the retrograde, then we saw that correction. We saw this massive dump before pumping into the second Pluto transit into the new sign. Okay, so very similar than what we're seeing in the Dow Jones. We are seeing a little bit of a dump right now, but very small. Yeah, I mean, could we see a little of a correction? Sure, but we might overall pump a bit more heading to January 20th. Now, what's really interesting is that we don't have much further to go until a new all-time high. So the question is, from now until January 20th, are we going to pump into a new all-time high? That would be at this level right here, around 36,944. That's only a couple percent, I believe, up. If we head past that, we're hitting a new all-time high, and that would be very, very bullish for Bitcoin, because when the Dow Jones hits an all-time high, we could see that with Bitcoin as well. Bitcoin could hit an all-time high. So only 2.45% more, and the Dow Jones hitting an all-time high. So that's the major question is, with this new Pluto transiting into Aquarius for the second time, is this going to bring us into a new all-time high in the Dow Jones and then potentially head us into an all-time high with Bitcoin? That's tough to know, but we're probably going to pump a little bit more, if not a lot more, into January. So that is exciting. It's also important to note that, usually the DXY, the value of the dollar, is dumping when Bitcoin heads to an all-time high. So this would need to start dumping below probably 99, and we're still up at 104. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. Right now we're at 43,800. So we could see something like this, maybe a little correction in December, and then maybe pump into January, something along those lines. Okay, and astrologically, what is happening around the time of the Pluto retrograde? Well, I wrote it down actually. So we do have the Saturn sextile Mars, which is happening on January 24th, which is positive. So that's good energy for a pump around January 20th. We also have Uranus stationing direct from January 26th, which typically marks a major market shift. So after January 26th, we could see a major shift in the market. Thus, if we have been pumping in January, we might see a correction. And I believe that would be a healthy correction, as Bitcoin has been pumping so much that a nice little correction down in the 30s again would be a very nice buying opportunity. Not financial advice, but I would be excited about that. So predictions, it's tough to say, but the Dow Jones and thus Bitcoin and altcoins could be peaking around January 20th, probably within a few weeks of January 20th. I'm not sure if it's going to be exactly on the dot of January 20th. That would be pretty wild if it was. It might be, within a few weeks of that date. So early January, or could go into February. And then we have a healthy correction after January 20th, most likely. And so another thing to note, is we could be having a really nice altcoin run heading into January 20th. So perhaps late December, early January, we're seeing a really nice altcoin run, and before it corrects after January. All right, so thanks so much for watching. This will be really exciting to see how things unfold in Bitcoin and the Dow Jones and the macro markets. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe. That's one of the #1 things you can do to support this channel and be coming out with more Bitcoin astrology videos. This is super, super interesting. So far, my predictions have been above 90% accuracy this year. Check out my previous videos for the proof of that. Definitely like this video, share it with a friend who could benefit from this, a crypto investor who would benefit from this information. This could help us all become crypto successful in 2024 and beyond. All right, so thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.